Hello, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time and attention today. It's a perfect time for us to get together and welcome to this session. This session is called The Road Ahead for OEMs, Upfitters, and Finance Providers. And boy, for April Fool's Day, you couldn't ask for a better environment to be talking about things that are going to be happening in the future, could you? I woke up this morning and I saw a headline that Warren Buffett bought Tesla. And then a little later, it, of course, explained that it was April Fool's. But I was also hoping that maybe all this tariff stuff, somebody would say, oh, April Fool's, and we could go back to work. But no, that's not going to happen today. So we're lucky to have this time at this point where we're trying to figure out the road ahead. Three of the best individuals from the best companies possible to help all of us understand and figure out for ourselves how we should go forward, how we see the future, and the strategies, the goals, the plans, our attitudes that we should use. So we've got three leading companies that have definitely passed the test of time. They predict the future, they predict the road ahead, constantly adjusting their strategies and goals and their plans, and they are now the leading companies in their fields. Kirk Mann is with us, who's the EVP and the head of transportation for Mitsubishi HC Capital America. Kirk, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jim. Glad to be here.
Jennifer Costabile is here, who's the General Director of Marketing and Sales Enablement for GM Envolve. Thank you, Jennifer. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
And then, of course, we've got Mandar Dighe. Mandar Dighe is the Global Sales, Marketing, and Business Development Executive for Napai. Mandar, thank you.
Thanks for having us, Jim. This is going to be great.
So I always, this is kind of an interesting, we talk about the test of time and trying to forecast the future. These three companies have been doing that for quite some time successfully. Can anybody guess which company, GM, Mitsubishi, or Napai, is the oldest? In the audience, I'll tell you. GM was founded in 1908 by William Durant, that's a long time ago, 1908. Congratulations, Jennifer. Mitsubishi goes all the way back to when Yamamoto Yamasaki in 1870. That was the beginning of the opening of Japan. But Napai wins. Heinrich Napai in 1848 founded the company. And these are the three companies that are still the standard bearers for our industry in their fields. So it shows with all this stuff going on, there's an end in sight and things will work out. And personally, I feel that these are great opportunities for good companies to rise above. And so that's a great chance for us today. Thank you all. In talking about the road ahead, obviously we want to work through what may be happening short term with the tariff situation, but not to let that take our eyes off the future, because at some point that'll become maybe kind of business as usual, whatever it's going to be. So as Kirk said earlier when we were having a pre-discussion, as long as it quit changing. Uncertainty is part of what we're starting to live with, but with uncertainty comes faith. So having all certainty doesn't help everything, but given the situation, it's still, we're going to have to look about beyond the tariffs. What's going to be the trends? How do we succeed in the future going forward in a world of different technology, different marketing and sales processes, different needs by customer, business to business, all these things that are going. And we have to start with not just the road ahead, but how do we see the road ahead as an individual company? The best place to start, I think, our conversations with Jennifer, because all of these things that are happening really begin as decisions that are made at the OEM level. they're the ones that decide the pricing and the product. They're the ones that decide the distribution processes. And then all the rest of us then take that decision in our piece and make best with it. So if we could start with you, Jennifer, and I'd like to ask, if I could, from your perspective, and you've got a long career with GM, and you've been through these cycles, how do you see both the short term and sort of the longer term outlook of the changes that we have to contend with from the tariffs forward in our industry? What is your Ouija board saying that we need to think about?
Well, first, I really don't have a comment on the tariffs. Or, I mean, we don't have details. We don't have how the impacts are. Again, that's still a TBD. But I think as a company, as an OEM, you always have to be prepared to pivot, and you always have to be prepared for short-term issues that come up, with whether it's supply chain issues, whether it's customer demand, whether it's a variety of things. So there's always short-term things that you have to contend with. And again, I think all of us, and especially General Motors throughout the years, is we've learned is that we can pivot pretty quickly based upon the market, based upon customer demand, based upon again, tsunamis that affect part suppliers. Those things are always going to happen. So what you can't do is let short-term issues change your long-term business. And I think that's how we've always tried to take a look at it, is that, we know for years to come, we have customers that need vehicles to do the work that they do for our customers' businesses. So we prepare for the long term and making sure that we have a viable way to produce vehicles that customers need for their work. And again, that's retail or commercial, but specifically talking commercial, is that we need to make sure that in the long term, we have a plan to deliver a wide variety of propulsion systems based upon the changing environmental situations, is that we always have something that our customers want. And that, again, long term, we don't change, again, putting, products in your portfolio and planning your portfolio is a long-term endeavor. And you don't change your portfolio overnight, and you can't, right? Because there's a lot of capital investment research that has to go into developing product lines. So long term, we stay the course, and we know that we have to continually improve our product line, enhance our product line, make changes that customers ask for. Short term, we will bob and weave and do what we need to do to help our customers get the products that they need to do the work.
Yeah. That's really good, a good perspective and a good advice. And there also may be some things in regulations that will offset some of this.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's still unknown. It's all out of it. It's unknown. And then also you've got decisions to make on how that tariff is absorbed, whether it's absorbed, some of it's internally, some of it in margins, some of it in efficiency. And I guess you're right. GM has always found a way around these things to get stronger from them, whatever it is that happens. And that's, I guess, the same of all the companies.
Yeah.
Mandar, how about your perspective?
Well, I absolutely agree with what Jennifer's saying. And, at the risk of sounding professorial, I think one thing that we all have to realize, and I think that, when you said that, GM has reacted, I think our industry has reacted as a whole with these things, which gives us credit. But, I think the thing about tariffs is that, all of us on this panel would be naive to think that tariffs that tariffs are a new thing. Tariffs have been around for, forever. They've been part of global trade and global trade policy and global economic dynamics for, forever, if you read the history books. So, even today, the commercial vehicle industry is affected by tariffs when you think about the infamous chicken tax on bringing commercial vehicles over and what that means and all that. So, I think the difference today versus, what's been happening in the past is that the word tariff has become very public, right? It's become very publicized, and it's like, okay, how do we get the word tariff out there? I mean, when my 14-year-old comes home and says, "Hey, Papa, what are you guys doing about tariffs?" I'm like, well, okay, dude, where's that coming from? I mean, usually you're just asking me for a couple $20 bills so you can hang out with your pals. Now you're wondering about global trade and how that's affecting, overall business. We've popularized the word tariff. It's fine. But Jennifer's point is very well taken, that we have to plan for the long-term haul, right? And whether it's a tariff, whether it's a pandemic that we all managed our ways through, whether it's a weather event like Jennifer commented, like a tsunami or a hurricane, or whether it's an individual incident at a supply plant where it disrupts the whole global perspective. We've got to be able to adjust, and all those things that happen affect the economics of things up and down, driving demand up and down. And again, planning for the long haul and being nimble to be able to react to that is what we all have allowed our companies all to be, successful from 1908 to 1848 in our existence. So, that's my professorial position, right? From an industry perspective, we're still very bullish on the fact that, America needs vehicles, commercial vehicles, in order to maintain its position, regardless, right? We need to build the roads. We need to bring the power. We need to deliver the goods. We need to make sure the internet's working, right? So from that perspective, from a General Motors perspective, they need to build the trucks and vehicles. From an Napai perspective, we've got to upfit those to make sure that they're useful for the workforce to be effective, be safe, productive, and efficient. And then, Kirk probably is going to say, from a finance perspective, we got to provide the right level of capital support and financial support to allow for that to happen. Because if that cycle ends, if we short cycle that, if we whipsaw decisions, and that's going to affect that economic cycle significantly. So we've got to be able to manage through the whipsaws collaboratively and figure out, okay, how does this work, longer term? We were joking about it, at the pre-call that, I said to Jennifer, Jennifer, General Motors can, you guys can turn on a plant in a week or two, right? And, we kind of all chuckled, but in some cases, some people may think, oh yeah, well, why don't they just take this plant and start making, 3,500 heavy duty trucks over there? It's not that easy.
It's not. You're right.
You're talking about probably, I don't know, Jennifer, maybe a year, 2 years to do something like that.
Oh, a lot longer. But
So the reality
there's an undercapacity that they could use, but you're right. Change the real advantage is going to be some of these new companies away from commercial that are going to start with new plans.
Yeah, but again, the development cycle, the supply chain cycles are all there. So, Jennifer's counsel, I think, is very well said, and most importantly, it's very well positioned that, hey, we got to manage the ups and downs to create that long-term sustainability. Because if our companies don't do that, then we're jeopardizing work in America, and that's something that no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, you can't disagree that that's something we can't afford to jeopardize with quick irrational decisions. So we just got to make sure that we're balancing that going forward.
Mandar, have you already felt any of the steel or aluminum cost increases, or
I think as an industry, there's some of that's being seen. I mean, different companies have different ways to manage that. So, depending upon what components and where it is and how things are happening, yeah, we obviously are seeing that. But I mean, there's obviously supply chain strategies that go into play to balance that as things go forward, right? I mean, if you think about a vehicle, if you think about a truck that General Motors makes, if you think about the dynamic cost position on a heavy duty truck or a medium duty truck that Jennifer's producing is changing on a minute by minute basis, right? So obviously the strategies and the positions that we all take individually to mitigate that and provide a stable environment for our consumers to move forward is critical. And we're all doing what we need to do to manage that.
Plus, this morning, we still don't know if commercial vehicles are in or out. That's There's still a lot of unknowns, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. And Jennifer hit it on the head.
Yeah.
Who knows right now, right? Right now, and I think I said it earlier, right? We may not even know after what happens this afternoon. Right?
You know who the person who knows is Kirk,
Yeah,
because the bankers always are ahead of us. They all, no matter what.
Let me tell you, Jim, we have tried to, we are certainly working as best we can to get ahead of this and understand it. But I think what you said at the beginning was spot on. And that is, yes, we have some uncertainty here, but we need to keep our eye on the long ball. And one of the things that, we're certainly going to do everything we can to favorably position our ability to serve our customers the way we have for a very long time. And that's going to take some work. We're at it right now, trying to figure it all out. We have dealers who are informing their customers that, look, you may be subject to a surcharge of X dollars between now and a certain time. After that certain time, you may be subject to, in addition to this Class 8 sleeper tractors, to an additional $35,000. Well, there's, anytime the price of anything goes up, there's an elastic response. The number of people who are willing to purchase that equipment at higher prices probably lowers, right? And right now, dealers all across the country are sitting on a lot of inventory that they need to get out the door. And so this threat of tariffs may actually pull forward some sales that might not have happened this quickly. But at the end of the day, we've got an end user customer that is squeezed in every direction. The truck costs more. Interest rates have been higher. They've come down a little bit lately, but the interest rates have been higher and insurance costs have been really, really high. And so they're getting squeezed on what it costs to operate that vehicle. And so they're going to have to pass along some increased costs to their customers or in their business. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to find ways to at least mitigate that squeeze a little bit. And so we're falling back a lot on F&V leasing and on track leases. But we'll even do a loan with a balloon, and this is any lender out there, right? But we have to find ways to make it affordable for them to get over this hump for a little while. Early in my career, I won't say the dates, the years, because that would really date me, and it just sounds really old. But early in my career, I traveled the country with a man named Bernie Allard at the company I was working for at the time. Bernie was the consummate finance professional, a wonderful, wonderful guy. And we were going all over the country to the larger truck dealerships and some of the medium duty truck dealerships and saying, look, guys, you need to act like the car people. You need an F&A manager, you know, and our thought was, well, that'll help because, we'll kind of focus all of our attention into one person. And it was good and it was efficient and it was valuable for what it was. But it disconnected us from the sales leaders in the dealership, the general managers in the dealership, and the dealer principals in the dealership. We kind of got lax for a while on just going to the F&I manager instead of meeting with the dealer sales management staff, the general management staff, and understanding the strategy and the needs of the dealers, which basically is really a conversation about the needs of their end user customers. Mm-hmm. So we're get back a little bit more to having a broader conversation in a dealership and not just focusing on the F&I manager. The F&I manager is swamped. We bring them into those conversations, of course, but they're swamped. And, it's not like they can sit there and wax philosophical about strategy. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to bring everybody together, understand where they need us to focus and the products that we need to deliver into that particular environment. And that's our mode of operation right now, is really working hard to figure out what our dealers need for their customers every day. That's where we're at right now.
That's great, Kirk. And the other thing is that when prices go up, and affordability is an issue. And we all know, we're all honest with ourselves, the salespeople don't sell the vehicles. The finance department sells the vehicles.
We help.
So maybe finance will play a bigger role in not just the deals, but also in forming shared asset models or ways of adjusting, to this new reality. And I like what Mandar said about the tariffs aren't new, price increases aren't new, and they're going to continue. So what we're doing is kind of accelerating the way we can contend with a higher price vehicle, maybe sooner, maybe it's 3 years earlier than what it's going to be. But have you looked at some of these different models of ownership or ways of financing that would allow a company to save money and buy a new vehicle?
Sure. On the earlier call, Catherine had on the screen a note or a statistic, and that was that 72% of all fleets are 5 or less vehicles, and 5 or more vehicles, right? So a fleet is not that big. It doesn't have to be that big. So the question becomes, what is the dealer doing to address that market? And do they have a fleet management solution for those customers? Because to the extent that a dealer can get involved that way, you can reduce costs because it's more scalable. The dealer knows they have service work coming in to their store, and they can provide even additional services to that end user customer that maybe they've never done before. Maybe they've just facilitated the loan or the lease with a lender, and that's it. That's where the relationship really kind of stopped. But if they can do more and help the customer by scaling the cost of those services down, that's a way that dealers can look at also helping not just the finance company, but the dealership, looking at ways of providing solution to their customers that drives costs down.
Yeah.
And there are a few of them out there, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot. Not today.
Yeah. So that Jennifer, back to you. That's really an interesting point. How is General Motors seeing this transition to mobility, and especially in Envolve? What are you doing to anticipate the future and provide this service to you, the business users, with your product?
When you're talking mobility, just various mobility solutions, I mean,
yes.
We know that different customers use their vehicles differently, right? So we have to be very flexible with, a customer that is going to upfit, put a substantial upfit on a heavy duty truck is more than likely going to keep that vehicle for a substantially longer time than a customer that is just, taking a mid-sized pickup for short routes that'll probably cycle at different times. So we want to make sure that we're providing mobility solutions to our customers to help them manage their fleet. So we have OnStar services that allow customers, you don't have to be a fleet of 1,000 to need telematics to effectively, manage your fleet. So we can help customers determine, when maintenance is needed when to cycle, when to keep vehicles, and how, and again, when's the time that, when's the best resale value for it. So we're looking at creating those tools so that our customers feel like they've got assistance in managing their fleets. And that's how we're using, the connected vehicle to really help our customers manage their fleets a lot more. Because again, even in their fleet, they have shorter use cases for certain types of vehicles and longer use cases for others. So we just need to make sure we have the flexibility in building the right vehicles for customers, but also making sure that we're boosting our residuals to make sure that, when they're coming out of those vehicles, that they get the best value for those companies. So mobility takes a lot of different turns. We probably have the most comprehensive lineup in the industry now with ICE vehicles and with electric vehicles. And we've probably had, Chevrolet is the number 2 electric vehicle of choice, and just had just spectacular sales of the Equinox E. We've had some, commercial adoption of that vehicle, and they've been upfitting that vehicle to do different work. So I do believe that, with the uncertainty around EV subsidies and all those kind of things, we still need to make sure we're drawing a future where customers have different types of solutions for their different types of work, right? Mm-hmm. We're also, from a mobility standpoint, really helping customers that need to start on a sustainability journey use tools to make decisions, what routes, what drivers, what vehicles are the most likely that would actually benefit most from actually turning to an EV, because there's still a real, cost savings in a lot of routes and a lot of work that would be better suited by an electric vehicle than they would be by an ICE vehicle. Mm-hmm. Depending on the type of work, if a vehicle sits idling for a long time, boy, that's the one that you want to make sure you select to get into an EV. So I think we're from General Motors and GM Envolve perspective, we're just trying to make sure that we've got the solutions that are right for our customers, and that we have a lot of different solutions, so that one size doesn't fit all anymore. And customers really need a personalized commercial solution for them based upon the work that they do.
Mm-hmm. Do you see then the service of mobility allows you to tap into revenue sources beyond selling a vehicle?
Oh, absolutely.
And getting involved in downstream as they use the vehicle, there's ways for you to share in the profit.
Yeah, there's it's amazing is that Super Cruise is something that we found that customers, once they have Super Cruise, they don't ever want to be without it, especially for highway driving. If you're driving longer routes, it really does save on energy and comfort while you're in use. So that's a subscription service that we can continue to develop. But then, fleet management through telematics and safety and security features that, we've got recovery solutions that our customers can get subscriptions to. There's, the number one issue for fleet managers is the safety of their people and the safety of the vehicles and the tools, et cetera, that they have in that vehicle, and that we have things that can recover those vehicles very quickly and keep their people safe.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So really, it may be higher price for the vehicle, but there may be more revenue generated per vehicle sold long term, especially if you look at after sales service and parts.
Yes,
that's a huge. So, given this, as we coming back to Mandar with the question, as the product needs change and the prices go up, and mobility becomes more of an issue, from an upfitter's perspective on your future product planning, how do you change the upfitter position and product and the value you're adding to the vehicle?
I think I'm just going to again piggyback upon what Jennifer said, is that the product isn't just a product, it's part of an overall solution, right? So, when you think about the vehicles that we are being asked to upfit bodies or equipment on, those vehicles are becoming extremely complicated, extremely connected, and extremely, let's just say, smart, right? So from that perspective, one of the things that we continue to promote is that, hey, it's an entire solution that we need to come up with. So in addition to the chassis that comes from General Motors or any other OEM that has telematics and different powertrain solutions and different use cases, we've got to make sure that the body and the upfit that goes on the back of it continues that path to make sure that the end user is able to do their job effectively. So what that means for us is that a couple things. Number one, we continue to work more closely with OEMs on a daily basis to understand, okay, what are the intricacies of the chassis that are coming our way, and how do we need to adjust in terms of product design, in terms of product features, and where are the points that we can interface You know, Jennifer brought up a really good point about maintenance and use. Well, sometimes on some of these vehicles that we upfit, you got a chassis and the equivalent dollar amount of the chassis is going on the back of the truck with a body,
Yeah.
auxiliary equipment. You know, Kurt's nodding because okay, there's a finance part to that whole thing too, right? But when you think about you know, it could be a large medium duty General Motors GM chassis like a 5500 chassis truck. We may put a mechanic's truck body on it, which has a crane, which has a compressor, which could have a welder, which could have a whole host of battery operated tools. That seems to be the trend now, is to go to rechargeable tools. Well, how do we get the information from all of that equipment tied into the overall information flow of that entire vehicle? And how do we take that and say, hey, you know what? You got to do a PM on your compressor. Hey, you know what? You got to do a PM on that crane. Or hey, the right rear door is open. Don't go down the road if it's open because that's a security issue. So there's a lot more intricate communication and integration into the vehicle systems that, as an upfitter and a body manufacturer and an equipment manufacturing in general, we've got to be involved with. It's not just as easy as taking the truck and just slapping some stuff on the back and letting it roll down the road anymore. You know, from a compliance, integration, and safety perspective, there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done, and that's something that we strive to improve on a daily basis. Is how do we continue to interface with our partners on the OEM side to make sure that we're offering up the best solutions possible. The word mobility, it's something that's used pretty frequently, but it has a lot of different interpretations on where to go. And where Jennifer was talking about the EV business case, she's absolutely right. There are cases where EVs can be very beneficial. However, you got to take into account that if the chassis is an EV, then you got to make sure you got the right equipment on the back so that vehicle is actually useful, right? I mean, payload is important. Range is important. All that stuff is affected by the physics of what you put on that chassis. So again, I tell people are like, well, what are you guys doing about EVs? Well, it's pretty simple. We've got to take into consider whether it's electric, gas, diesel, just name it, hybrid, whatever the power source is and whatever that powertrain situation is, we got to relate that back to the use case of the consumer and make sure that we're giving them a upfit solution that is compliant, safe, and productive.
Yeah.
Right? And those are three different things. I mean, you could be compliant, but it's not necessarily going to be productive. You could think it's safe, but it's not compliant, right? I mean, that's a very interesting balance that we have to play. And then, the next obvious question is okay, how do you make that affordable that fits within the business profile for that customer? And, we put together the stuff on the back of that chassis, and then you're right. The finance side of it's important. The F&I guys or the fleet management companies are looking at that overall cost position, and they've got to make sure that it works within the financial boundaries of the customers that we're trying to serve. So, it's an always dynamic and moving equation, I wouldn't say equation, but it's an always dynamic environment that we're working in. And it's never a dull job. I mean, it's never a dull moment in our world.
Are you getting more involved with the product planning folks at the OEMs? Are they bringing you under the tent at all?
I think that's going to be inherently. I think it's just going to be inherent to our industry that it doesn't, whether it's us or any of our peer companies in our industry. We all have to be more. We have to be closer with our OEM friends to make sure that entire solution is integrated and makes sense, right?
And service.
Right? That's exactly right. I mean, we're seeing a very large increase in demand for mobile service type of units, right? That, hey, a fleet of 10, if a OEM or an equipment manufacturer can send out a service vehicle to do PMs, predictive PMs, emergency quick fixes to get things rolling, or even major jobs, that's a very important aspect that we support that growth. And
right.
it's changing from that perspective,
I think I was going to mention one thing. During our earlier discussion, we talked about the weather and the weather in LA. The last couple of police chases on the LA freeways have been work trucks with Napai bodies on them. Just so you know that now work trucks they're so expensive. People are stealing them. You've made.
I don't know if I want to know that. I don't want to be known for that, but I mean,
No, well, work trucks have really moved up.
But hey, no, but I think that's a very valid point. I mean, you think about the value of the equipment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You think about the chassis plus the body plus all the tools and the equipment that's in it. I mean, you're talking about a serious investment, right?
Right.
And frankly, you're right. I mean, again, who knows what there are motivations. There's always motivations for every action, right?
Yeah.
But it's a pretty big deal. And you think about our larger companies, like we said earlier, we're all pretty sizable companies that say, okay, we're going to weather it. We're going to manage the ups and downs for the long term. Well, some of our hardworking folks in this country are not that big to be able to absorb those shocks. So we've got to be able collaboratively, with the product, the capital on cost, and then also the, how you're offsetting that capital financing. We've got to be able to flex and provide solutions collaboratively to make sure that America's workers are taken care of, and we continue to progress down this road.
That's true. Kirk, I'd like to ask you a question. In this point, it's really a good one. From a standpoint of seeing the path forward and what do we do, a real easy question for you is, how do you see the economy going forward?
Yeah, that's going to be that's a big one. That's a big one. Look, we do our very best, Jim, to predict the future so that we can kind of position correctly. The first segment of the transportation space that goes into a cycle is always the over-the-road companies, and they usually go in, and then about 12 to 18 months after that, the general economy has a challenge. But recently, with COVID and the massive quantitative easing that was, fuel for the economy so that it wouldn't, go to a bad place, really has created a situation where we are experiencing the deepest and the longest over-the-road cycle that I've seen in 35 years.
Really?
There you go. I was trying to not date myself earlier. So that's definitely the deepest and longest cycle I've seen. And it's always a precursor to the general economy. Well, we've seen a little bit of inflection up, but it's still dragging on the bottom. And I remember in 2008, when the over-the-road space was coming out in July of 2008, diesel fuel was at $4.72 a gallon. That's a lot of money for a gallon of diesel fuel. We thought it was coming out. And then Lehman filed for bankruptcy protection. Yeah. And the trucking OTR guys went right back into a cycle. So now they came out pretty quick. I mean, it was 2010 first quarter, it just took off. And the reason it did is because of what Mandar was saying earlier. We need tomatoes, we need food, we need clothing, we need the stuff that we need in order to live. And so we've been watching it, and it's been dragging along pretty slowly. And then, pursuant to about 30 months, maybe 24 months, our work truck portfolio, which is more tied to the general economy, right? That began to show some signs of stress. Things are getting better in both right now. Tariffs and the conversation about it is probably putting some question mark beside a lot of people's purchases. But at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said at the beginning of the call, which is we need to keep a long-term focus. And I love what Jennifer and Mandar are talking about when it comes to providing solutions for customers and not just a piece of equipment. From a lending perspective, those solutions, as you go down the ecosystem of solutions, one example would be a refrigerated carrier needs to measure the temperature of a crate of strawberries. So they put a dongle in the strawberry crate so that they can measure that temperature. Well, that's cold chain management. And there's technologies that go with that, and those technologies cost money. So what we can do as a lender is we can provide subscription financing to some of those technologies. We could do it with telematics. It just depends on the situation. But Mandar said it earlier, it's not just the chassis. It's also the body and the work that body is performing. And so you really need an integrated look and feel for what's going on with that chassis and that body at all times. And so when you get into those expenses that are most likely technology expenses, we can provide subscription financings in those environments. They cost money. They cost extra money, but they pay for themselves in spades. So I love the conversation about solutions. That's exactly where all of our heads need to be at. And as a lender coming on the back end of all of this, we need to be prepared to offer solutions that work, lending solutions that work.
And you make a really good point for all of us on the call, that as we go through these changes and the tariffs, there's a difference between the retail and the business users, and that we're in the business piece of this, and that allows us a very different set of solutions. And I appreciate that. So Jennifer, I had another question for you back on from a standpoint of General Motors, and that is we see an evolution of the effort to make mass use of EVs, and now as you properly do, is identify the use cases for EVs. But with the changes that may be occurring with regulations, how are you seeing EV or hybrid or IC going forward? You're in the EV business. I'm convinced long-term, EV is a solution as technology advances. But from your standpoint, at this level, have you seen a change in EV demand or in your forecast for your EV products going forward?
So I would say that the demand has slowed just from unease in the economy, I would say, more so than anything else, and about like what's going to happen. We still are very unsure about regulations and GHG requirements, etc. But I will tell you this: we have seen customers start to adopt EVs, start to filter in EVs. Are they going to mass adopt EVs into their fleet right now? No. But are they starting to, so that they start to build the capabilities and kind of that ability to learn so that they can start to transition? Because I think everyone would agree long term, we are going to need EV solutions for our future, for the planet's future. There's no question about that. But as our customers start to wean in electric vehicles, what we're trying to do is really help them figure out. We have an analysis tool that we're using with our customers. We take the API data from the vehicle, again with the customer's permission, and map it up with and map it along with the number of chargers in a particular market. We look at the routes that these drivers are taking. We look at the work that's being done. Again, we can look at all their own metrics from an ICE vehicle. But then we also do a survey with the customers. We actually do a survey on behalf of a fleet customer to the drivers. And at that point, we look at a couple of different areas. The propensity, some people are first movers, and I want to be the first one to have an electric vehicle. There's some people that say, I live in an apartment, I can't get one, I can't have an EV. There's some that say, I will never drive an EV. So if we score these individuals based upon willingness to adopt, you match it up with the technical data, and then all of a sudden we can help a customer start to plan transitioning some drivers, some routes, some vehicles that make sense for their business into their fleets. So that's how we're starting to do it. And I will tell you this, what we're hearing from customers that have purchased the Equinox EV for their fleets, some police departments that have put Blazer EV PPV into their fleets, but especially from the Silverado EV, the customers that start to drive these vehicles love them.
Yeah.
And they don't want to go back. They don't want, they're for a variety of reasons, they don't want to go back. So once people get in electric vehicles, they want to stay in them. And you find that on the retail side is once person adopts EVs, they don't go back.
Yeah.
So we're starting down that pathway. We do have some customers, some larger customers that are European-based customers, and they have mandates, and that's, they have global mandates. And again, because of the short term, who knows what's going to happen in the US? I will tell you, Europe is already there. They are well already there. So we just kind of have to be able to help our customers start this. And I think, once they start to get EVs into their fleets, it builds a little bit of muscle memory. So, and again, some knowledge about how you add more and more and more as you need to, as you go into the future. So I think it's really great learning lessons for everyone. Some people in, like, say, the ZEV states are going to adapt faster than somebody like, say, in the middle Midwest, in Iowa or something like that. So I think there's different levels of engagement. I think adoption on the commercial side will be slower than on the retail side, and it's for a variety of reasons, mostly infrastructure. But as I say, you're going to still see it keep moving and going forward. But we're still seeing increases of market share and adoption. But again, the growth rate, it's not a hockey stick. It's going to be a slow adoption rate.
So it'll be
steady.
It'll be good. So if the EV change is going to be a little more gradual, do you see a shift of technology of autonomous vehicles beginning to build into that, especially in last mile or in vans?
I think what you're seeing, or you're going to see different levels of autonomy. Again, what we want to do is bring different levels of autonomy into our vehicles that people will actually be in. So customers can own these vehicles that will have different levels of autonomous capability, and it's coming faster than you think, because the capabilities is immense. But again, it's capabilities of say an HVAC person, the route's already laid out for them so that they can do their paperwork while the vehicle is driving to that next stop. So there's going to be different levels as we move forward. So that's coming. But again, I think we brought Cruise we're using Cruise, which was our autonomous company. We're using that technology to help us push and move faster to build it into vehicles that GM produces and sells to retail and commercial customers.
Okay. And interesting, Mandar, if we have autonomous work trucks, how about, is there autonomous upfits that complement them?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I mean, I think inherently the upfitting world is building products and putting them on vehicles that are taking tools, equipment, goods somewhere where there needs to be an individual, not necessarily an autonomous person or autonomous device that is going to make a decision and execute on what they see when they get there. So I think from our standpoint, I mean, we will be able to adjust. We haven't necessarily been involved in too much of that yet. If the chassis is going to be autonomous, I think the one interesting thing that Jennifer says is, like, okay, the good example she brought up is that HVAC person, right? Okay, let's say the person goes to stop, the vehicle goes to stop one. They get out, they diagnose the problem on the system at that residence or that business. They fix it with with the tools. They get the tools, they fix it, they get back in the vehicle. And then maybe the thought process is, all right, that individual needs time to preview or maybe pre-diagnose what's going to happen at the next stop, right?
Mhm.
So the vehicle can go to the next location, whether it's, via Super Cruise or Super Duper Cruise or whatever, whatever
Yeah.
it's going to be, right, Jennifer?
Employing AI is what
Right.
you're doing.
But again, it's taking the responsibility of the individual going from one location to another location. Once they get to that location, they're still going to need the box and back that may have the screwdriver, dare I say, an old-fashioned screwdriver, to repair the equipment, or they may need to, like, hey, get under the hood of that combine and check out what's going on, because there isn't something that's happening. So I mean, I think autonomy is going to be more chassis driven, and as we need to adjust appropriately from the upfit side, we'll make those adjustments. But again, we're waiting for cues. We're more waiting for cues from the chassis OEMs, and where they go with it is probably the most appropriate thing to say.
How about consolidation? We've seen a couple upfit companies consolidate into larger groups. Have you seen that trend, or do you participate?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some momentum in that arena across our industry. And I guess it depends, you see a couple things. You see some consolidation from a geographic standpoint. You see some consolidation with longer, some family-owned smaller upfitters that are getting absorbed into larger upfitting groups or consortiums and things like that. So it's another dynamic in our industry that continues to evolve. We're also seeing consolidation and footprint changes within the dealership spaces as well.
Oh, for sure.
To be a really good, I mean, Jennifer can probably attest to this, right? To be a really robust, effective commercial dealer, that in some cases can almost be a separate business endeavor entity from being a good retail dealer, right?
You're
So
right.
there's a lot of capital investment that needs to occur for the folks to be effective in their markets. And you see it not only on the upfitting side, but you're seeing it on the dealer side as well. And I think it's something that all of us need to adjust and move forward to, or adjust and be anticipating the forward movement in that arena.
Did you have a comment on that, Jennifer? That's an interesting point.
No, as I say, I think Mandar's absolutely correct. And as I say, it's difficult to be able to do this work and have the investment. And I know it's really difficult to find the people to actually do the work.
Mhm.
So I think more so than anything is that, you have to have, the capability to do it all as an upfitter, versus you can't just kind of stick your toe in it, because
Right.
again, the costs are too high.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, when you're messing with a chassis, you really you have to know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Because you can make some pretty expensive mistakes if you're not.
That's an electric one.
Yeah, it's very expensive.
Well, I
So-
think the most important thing is there's the actual electrical or physical mistake, but you don't want to jeopardize the safety of the people driving that vehicle. And
Right.
let's just be honest. When we get a chassis from General Motors or anybody, it's still considered an incomplete vehicle, right?
Right.
So we are responsible. Our industry is responsible for completing that vehicle and ensuring that it's compliant and it's safe.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a huge burden that we all have to take seriously. And I know at Napai, it's number one priority. We've got to make sure that our vehicles are compliant and safe. And the customer may want us to put some on the back of that truck, but if it's not going to be safe for that individual or not be compliant, then we're going to have a discussion on what alternatives could be and should be.
Christina, you had a little note under our screen about a question, but I never saw the question. Are you there?
Yeah,
I
can.
Want me to read it for you, Jim? It says, what measures can truck dealers take to give lenders confidence to work with them? How does this vary based upon the size of the dealership? And I think it's directed at Kirk.
Kirk.
Yeah. That's a great question. And, what I was 50 seconds? Okay.
A minute.
Really quick. At the end of the day, lenders only have so much capacity for so many relationships and so many applications that are coming in the door. So we have to make sure that we are doing business with dealers that are efficient. They send us an application and we're likely to approve it. We approve it and we are likely to fund it. So what we're looking for, and this is any lender anywhere, we're looking for efficiency. What is our look to book? How many applications are coming in the door and how many of those applications are we booking? Because it costs us money to look at every single deal that comes in the door. So we have to kind of pick our partners because we only have so much bandwidth. And if a dealer wants to, work with a lender that maybe they're not working with today, they need to be able to talk about their customer base, what the deals look like, how many they think they're going to have in a month, and what we possibly could do together in terms of actual fundings, because we only have so many people in the shop.
Is the most enjoyable time I have of any of these interfaces is visiting with the three of you. We get the lessons of longevity. That means stay the long course. And the other one is not everything's going to end tomorrow. And this is an opportunity of change. And if your business will benefit from change, now's the time and excuse to do it. And here you've got three great companies that are examples of those to follow, along with our help from Work Truck Solutions that makes this possible and will be sort of a consolidator to allow us to adapt to the future. So I thank you all very, very much, and I appreciate the time of the audience. And I look forward to October 8th when we can resume our conversation and discuss not what's going to happen, but what did we do? That's the key part. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.